think winning is hard, especially when you're trying to repeat. You know, everything was clear for us and what we wanted to accomplish this year, and we came up short.
Back goes Purdy's looking, fires, complete touchdown.
We're going to make enough plays. When it happens, we lose football games.
The 49ers knock off the defending champ.
You don't win a Super Bowl season is disappointment. Kind of all that for nothing.
All that for nothing out of Saquon Barkley's mouth. That was the last time we saw the Eagles, by the way. And the run game went backwards in 2025, just a year removed from their Super Bowl win. Philly ranked top 5 in 2024 in yards per rush, rushing first downs and touchdowns, but fell well outside the top 10 in all 3 of those in 2025. There's been a lot of conversation around the Eagles, what's going on. There's been anonymous reports, all that jazz, but the numbers bear out a lot of this as well. And we certainly talked about plenty of it as the season was developing last year. Mina, Jalen Hurts' success is tied to the Eagles' run game. So what adjustments do the Eagles need to make this offseason to improve?
Yeah, well, let's start by talking about why the run game matters so much for Hurts in particular. I dispute the notion that Hurts isn't coachable. His improvement over the course of not just his professional but college career speaks to the fact that he is quite coachable. However, I do think it is indisputable that he has certain preferences, like a lot of quarterbacks, one of which is he doesn't like throwing over the middle of the field. He prefers to face single high coverage. The best throw in his arsenal is a go ball. When he gets those one-on-ones on the outside, that's when a lot of the magic happens. Now, the problem is, and Laura, the numbers you put out illustrate this, you're not getting as much of that single high coverage when defenses aren't bringing extra safety into the box to stop the run. So I think for the Eagles, that is the single most important thing they have to accomplish this offseason. And it's not just about Sean Mannion, the new offensive coordinator, coming in and figuring out a way to diversify the rushing attack. It's also about the personnel. Howie Roseman in this draft. The offensive line wasn't as good last season. And I do think you've got, an aging legendary right tackle in Lane Johnson that they could look to back up in case he misses games. But to me, if you're focused on fixing the run game in order to help your quarterback be his best self, it has to be attacked from all angles, schematically, but also in terms of adding offensive linemen. They added a blocking tight end, which I loved, by the way, but that's something that has to continue to be a focus in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Tim, so much of this, too, has people scratching their heads like, why did Saquon Barkley have the year that he had previously and then last year fell off a cliff?
Well, some of it is just opportunity. You think about it, he had about 75 fewer carries last year than the year prior. So that's part of it. Mina touched on it. She's exactly right. The offensive line is getting older. They have not been as good. So that ends up being the issue. Look, he rushed for over 2,000 yards 2 years ago and was just over 1,100 this past season. He rushed for 13 touchdowns 2 years ago. Rushed for 7 last year. Think about this. Now, look, and I'm not sure it's sustainable, his 2024 campaign, I guess it would have been. Like, he was averaging 5.8 yards per carry. So, you wonder, like, hey, how do you win a Super Bowl with this team and this offense and this quarterback and this and that? Look, they were a big play waiting to happen when they turned around and handed the ball off. Look, that was different. And so, yeah, like, it shouldn't be a shock that Hurts's, production, consistency, all of that is going to be tied directly to Saquon Barkley's production and how well he plays.
So, I think a lot of Eagles fans are saying that maybe the media is unfairly going after the Eagles or whatever it is, or conspiracy theories. To me, it's very simple. The Eagles have very high standards because they always have one of the best rosters in football. And so I don't think it's just Jalen Hurts under pressure every year. I think it's also Nick Sirianni. I think it's the entire roster. Mina's right. Jalen Hurts has shown a lot of coachable tendencies over his career. He would not have improved as much as he has if he was uncoachable. However, there were obvious issues. Last year, the downfield passing just wasn't as accurate as it has been. If you look at the numbers, especially to open guys down the field, it wasn't nearly what it was in 2024. I just feel like the Eagles, Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, they feel like they give you one of the best rosters in football, and the tax you pay on that is your job is always under scrutiny. They fired Andy Reid. They fired Chip Kelly. They fired Doug Peterson about 5 minutes after he won a Super Bowl because of the pressure that gets built up there. So, yes, a guy like Jalen Hurts, after a down year, is always going to be under scrutiny, but it's almost a compliment, Philadelphia. The one thing to watch for me is what happens in the next few months as far as Jalen Hurts' contract. $22 million guaranteed next year. That's not a lot for quarterbacks. I'm intrigued to see if that develops.
It's a good point. The Eagles, we're talking about the coachability of Jalen Hurts. They're on their 5th OC in 6 seasons under Sirianni. Hurts is on his 13th play caller, okay? So I'm pretty sure he's coachable, people. To Cleveland, where the quarterback competition, speaking of those, is already heating up. Our Browns reporter bringing up some really interesting stuff, Daniel Oyefusi, released a story on ESPN.com this week where head coach Todd Monken said this on the QB competition, quote, they're going to be evenly dispersed, but we'll definitely disperse them to give ourselves a chance to at least evaluate who we have on the roster and who that might be as we go through the offseason. Talking about reps, okay? When asked how he'll decide who takes the first starting reps, specific situation here, Monken said it would be based on, quote, what we've seen in the past and where the year ended last year. So I don't know. I'm trying to decipher some of that, but the Browns QB room is currently at a crossroads. You've got a pair of 2025 rookies with limited experience, both getting in the fray last season with mixed results. And then there's Deshaun Watson, who has 72 career starts, but made none last season after continued problems with his health. And a lot of buzz from Cleveland this week. According to Browns owner Jimmy Haslam, Deshaun Watson is in the mix to start. Todd Monken had good things to say about Shedeur Sanders. We've heard that Shedeur has been in the building a lot, too. Tim, what's the smartest path for the Browns at QB?
Look, listen, they need to rebuild it at quarterback. And this is the way I look at it is this. If I were Todd Monken, and I could coach as long as he is coached, to get the opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL, and you might be your only one, I don't think that he's going to live and die on that opportunity with the current room at quarterback. Now, it doesn't mean that he won't live with that this year. But so I think what they're going to do is, I really don't think Watson has a shot. He's been away from the game for so long. He's had basically 2 Achilles injuries. I think his credibility in the locker room has been compromised because of his past. I just think there's too many things with it. And so I think Shedeur Sanders finds himself in a remarkable position to be a 5th-round draft pick, to have a losing record as a starter, as a rookie, and have a legitimate chance to be the starting quarterback opening day the following season. It doesn't happen often. In fact, I have thought about it. I don't know that I can remember another scenario like that in the National Football League. So if they don't draft a quarterback, and I think there's a lot of people that believe that they won't, I think he's got a good chance. He should be in the building to try to prove that he can play at a starter level.
It has to be Shedeur. I'm with Tim. I don't think that Deshaun Watson should be in this quarterback competition. I think that you give Shedeur the runway, and obviously you can have a training camp battle with Dillon Gabriel. I just think Shedeur is a lot better than Dillon Gabriel, and he'll win that competition as long as everything is equal and everybody is healthy. So I think you just go with that. I think that they can have an okay season. I do think that they'd be okay generally if they take a step back this year. 2027 is a very deep quarterback draft. You're talking about Dante Moore, Arch Manning, CJ Carr, Darian Mensah, John Mateer. There are so many names out there. This is not the year to reach for a quarterback. You do not want to be in the market for a Ty Simpson, a Carson Beck, and a Nussmeier. You wait for a year. I like Todd Monken playing the patient approach, getting Deshaun Watson out of this competition, getting Shedeur in there for a year.
Yeah, Mina, what's your view on how the Browns are approaching the season? Oh, sorry.